Okay, thank you everybody for joining. My name is Matt. I'll be going over the workshop today, kind of giving you guys a rundown on Git and GitHub Desktop. The first thing you guys are going to want to do, I know I've said this, but install Git, install GitHub Desktop, and create a GitHub account. Git and GitHub Desktop are all different things that are related. So I'm going to explain to you guys the difference between Git and GitHub Desktop and all this stuff. Then I'll be showing you guys the basic rundown on how to use Git and what Git is used for, and then how to use it specifically with GitHub Desktop so that you guys are able to manage and manage the version control of any software projects you want to work on. So you can work on software projects with other people. So the first thing I want to do is really get into the difference between Git, what Git is compared to GitHub. So Git itself is a distributed version control system. So what it allows you to do is it allows you to manage a software project and different versions of that software project and control exactly what is being done to that software project and it's on your own computer and on a remote computer. That's why it's distributed, because you can have a copy on your computer, a copy on your friend's computer, and a copy on, for example, github.com. So it's a distributed version control system. What GitHub is just a website so that you can house all those remote projects called remote repositories. Repository is just a project, but it's just, we call it the top level folder for that and houses that entire project. So when you hear repository, just think the overall project. So GitHub is a way that you just keep track of all your different Git repositories, all your different Git projects. Another website is Git Lab. I think the CCI department really enjoys Git Lab here at Drexel. Git Lab is similar to GitHub. GitHub is owned by Microsoft and has this GitHub Desktop tool, and GitLab is a free and open source. So both are free, but GitLab is open source. People like GitLab for that reason. We'll be going over GitHub today. We're using GitHub today just because we can go over GitHub Desktop, which allows you to interact with GitHub, the website, very easily on your computer, just by not using any commands in the command line, but just by using the GitHub Desktop UI. So I want to talk a bit about the core ideas of Git before we get into the GitHub Desktop specifics. There's a lot of words on this slide. Don't worry, it all comes together if you haven't used Git before. So initializing a repository is something that you hear quite a lot. All it means is to designate a folder or create a folder and say this folder is now going to be used for a Git project, for a software project that will be managing using Git. So if you initialize a repository, it creates a little folder titled .git, and this tiny little .git hidden folder in that repository is what manages all of the versions of the software. You see it as a folder in your computer, no problem. But it's a repository now that we've initialized it. Git has a thing, and if I'm going too fast or you have a question, feel free to type in the Zoom chat and ask, by the way. So adding and committing and pushing are three things that you often hear side by side in Git, one after the other. And so when you're working on a Git project, you're gonna, maybe you're coding something and you edit a file and you add like 100 lines of code or whatever you're doing on this project. Then you're going to have that file and you're going to see in Git and in GitHub Desktop, you'll see that file has been changed. So what you're going to want to do is add that file. In GitHub Desktop, that's as easy as hitting a checkbox. And when you add that file, you take that changed file and maybe have another changed file. It's also 100 lines of code, whatever. You take those changed files and you put them on the launchpad. And so that way you've added them, they're on the launchpad, but they aren't really bundled together. They aren't really connected in any way. That's when you take these added files that you've changed and you commit them. So what committing does is it takes whatever changes you've made from these added files and you tie them all together and put a little Post-it note on them. So when you commit, you have a commit message. So maybe you have a commit message that says added feature Y, whatever Y is. You just describe what you did with that change with those files. And so you're able to add the files to the Launchpad and then commit them, wrap them all up, and put a sticky note on them. So now everybody who looks at a glance is able to say, oh, that commit did this thing, or the change to those files did this thing because of the message. And now that you've bundled all these files together on the Launchpad, you're able to push those. So you have all these commits that you bundled together. It could just be one commit, it could be 10, whatever it is. And then you're able to take the files from your local machine, all those commits, and push them to the remote server. And what this does is instead of it just existing on your computer, you're now able to push it to the remote server so that everybody who's been invited to the project on GitHub is now able to see all those commits. And they're able to say, oh, okay, so they did this and they did that and they did the other thing. So now they know exactly what you did and what changes have been made. But they aren't able to work with those changes until they pull those changes. So you have your own local repository that you're working on. You change stuff, you push it to the cloud repository on github.com. People see that you've made those changes and they say, okay, I want to take those changes, put it onto my local repository, and then I want to make some additional changes. So what that is that's called pulling. And so they pull those changes. It just copies the remote repository to their own local repository. So any changes that other people have made, it updates their local version of the project with those changes. Cloning is another thing that people do when they first are invited to a project, where when you are first invited to a project, before you're able to really work on it and contribute to it, you have to clone that project. And that just means that you are copying what's remote and putting it on your own computer. That's like the initial setup stage of using Git. And branches are something that you hear all the time with Git. You might be familiar with that term if you haven't used Git before. Branch is something we're going to be getting into. And what it is it allows you to work on a feature yourself while somebody else is working on a different feature. That's very core to the idea of Git, allowing people to work on the same software project at the same time, but doing different things on that one software project. And so you could create a branch and then make so-and-so change on that branch while somebody's making a different change on a different branch, and then eventually merge them all together to have one finished project. Are there any questions? Type it in the chat right now or speak out if you would like about those sort of core Git concepts, because that's really all you need to know about Git for this workshop, for this GitHub Desktop workshop. So any questions, feel free to say anything. If not, I'll continue. Okay. So I'm going to dive right into GitHub Desktop and get going with a local repository. And when I say local, I mean something that is not involving github.com, but something that is only on your machine. So there's no pushing or pulling to a remote repository, but you're still able to do all the things that you could do on a normal project. So when you first log into GitHub Desktop rather, what you're going to be seeing is a page that says to create a new repository, create a tutorial repository, whatever it may be. What you want to do, you can click on one of those buttons, or you can just go to File up top here and say New Repository. This initializes a repository. You give it a name, a project name. I'm just going to call it Test Project. I'll call it whatever. IEEE description is fine. Then you choose a place on your computer to put that repository. For me, I like to have a nice space, a nice folder for all my projects. So I have a little folder called GitHub in my documents. You could just, if you're on GitHub Desktop right now following along, just put it on your desktop if you want, or just anywhere on your computer as long as you know where it is. So I'm just going to choose to put this project in this folder, and I'll make a README because why not? We're not going to worry about the license or the git ignores. Git ignore is if you're doing something, let's say you're using a what's the word I'm looking for? The name's escaping me, but let's say you're making a software project in an IDE that is, like, let's say it's Microsoft Visual Studio. Then you're going to want to choose the git ignore for Visual Studio, and then you're able to work on the Git project using this other program, Visual Studio. We're not going to worry about that because we're not going to be getting too crazy on the coding side of things. We just want to talk about Git. So I'll file, create new repository, give it a name, choose a location, and create repository. And right away, you're going to be seeing this folder in GitHub or in wherever you choose to put it. So for my case, my documents, GitHub, and then there's this test project folder. You'll see there's a .git folder. Don't worry about it. Don't touch it. But now we've managed to create a repository. We've managed to create a folder just for Git. And that way, everything we do in this folder is now going to be this software project that we're managing with Git. And this is at this point is basically when you would be really deep into the command line using Git. But since we're using GitHub Desktop, we're able to do a lot of things very easily without using the command line at all. GitHub Desktop is really a way to replace the Git commands. You can replace those commands with just a nice, simple, easy to use UI. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that just by working on this project with some small little things. So what I'm going to do, and feel free to follow along, is just create a text file. So I'll create a text file. I'll call it testfile.txt. And I don't have to, but I'll add some text into it just so it's full of something. And so now that I've created this test file, usually it would be actual code or actual something, but for this purpose, just a text file. And I go into GitHub Desktop, you'll see that I have a changed file. And now at this point on the Git command line, you would be doing this by typing in like Git status, and it would show you on the command line, you have this file and this file in red. You have to add those files so they're green. But none of that has to be done in GitHub Desktop. In GitHub Desktop, you'll remember before I talked about adding and committing and pushing. Now, I'm not going to worry about pushing for this example, but adding and committing is essential. GitHub Desktop is able to see that I have a changed file, and this checkbox means that it is currently added. So when I am looking at this commit message down here, this has already been added by default, because it's a changed file and I want to commit this file and basically save that change. So I could add a commit message down here in this little box. You'll see your little GitHub profile picture right here. All of these messages will be, or all these commits will be logged as being done by you. So now that you have made that change in the folder, you go into GitHub Desktop, and whatever change is seen here on the left, you can create a little commit message. So you're able to say, oh, created first test file, whatever the commit message is. This is almost like adding comments on code. You just want to make it so somebody can look at it at a glance and say, oh, this commit did that thing. And you can add a description like testfile.txt is full of random text. Whatever description works. This is all, it's the Git is nice because it's a version control system, but it's a system. So you're able to use this system and adapt it to however you want to use it. So it has the core functionalities of the system, and then however you and your own software group or your own project groups want to manage the software, then you're able to sort of manage it in your own way, whatever works for your own group. So I created that file. GitHub Desktop is able to see that the file is changed. It is added because I have hit this little checkbox here that adds the file. I hit a commit message, and now I just hit the commit button. So add and commit. And right away, you'll see GitHub Desktop says now there are no changes. And that's because Git knows, or Git, it has been saved to Git that I added that text file that I've named test file. Not the greatest name, looking back on it. And it knows that I have added that, and it has saved that change. So now, for the rest of history with this software project, that change has been saved. So let's say there's a disaster, and we have to go back in time and go back to before there was a disaster in the software project. We can always go back to that commit or any other commit. It's like a checkpoint, if you will, within your Git project, your Git managed software project. So now I have 0 changed files because Git knows that, all right, nothing else has changed, everything's been saved. We are okay at this point. This is the point that you're able to push if we're on a remote repository, but we're on just a local repository. You'll see that there is a publish button in GitHub Desktop. This is if you wanted to take your local repository and put it on github.com. We're not going to worry about that for this, but that's always an option. If you begin working on something on your own computer and you want to invite people to work on it with you, you can publish that repository to github.com. And we'll get to the remote stuff later on in the workshop here. So I'm going to show you right now, the thing that you always do in Git is manage or edit your currently existing files. So now if I go into testfile.txt, and instead of this line of text, I change it to, let's just say, hello world, and I save it. And I hit X, this text file has now been saved as something different, and I go back into GitHub Desktop. Now you'll see, oh, hang on, this file's been changed again. And this change has not been saved. This is a totally new change as far as Git is concerned. So now this file that we already had is now marked as a changed file. So again, I could do the exact same thing. I make sure it's checked off. It's checked off by default. So the add stage has been completed. I've added that file to the little launchpad. And then I want to bundle up this change, put a little sticky note on it so it's saved and Git knows the change has been made. So I say updated test file, and I can say description. Now it makes sense. There we go. So now anybody looking at this change is able to look at this and go, oh, okay, they did this and it does this, and that makes sense to some other person looking at the commit message, or it makes sense to you 6 months from now looking back saying, what the hell was I doing with this project? Now you know what you've done because you're adding these little messages, this little comments as you work on the project. So I've changed the file, it's been added, so and now it's that has been committed when I hit this button. And that's really the core thing, the core element of Git that you'll be using quite a lot is you make a change, you make a commit message. Make a change, make a commit message. The commits you want to think of as being almost like different versions themselves. So if you've ever seen a software or ever seen a piece of software that has version like 1.0.1 or 1.0.2, 1.0.3, all those little 0.1s, 0.2s, 0.3s, those are like different commit messages. So every time you make a change in your Git project and you want to mark that change, like this is like a change that I want to save and I want to mark a little checkpoint here as an important milestone, then you make a commit message for that milestone. And it could be as big or as small as you'd like. Git is a system that you're able to use for your own benefit in your own projects. But this is how you would do it in GitHub Desktop. You make a change, you add it with a checkbox, then you add a commit message, and then hit commit. And that is the core element of what Git is all about. We're going to get to branching next. So does anybody have any questions about editing a file or making a file and then going through this add commit process? Feel free to speak up or type in the Zoom chat if you have a question. Okay. I'm going to imagine everybody's okay and everybody's on board with this. If you're following along, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. Soon we'll be inviting you to a cloud repository. We're able to work on a cloud repository together. But before that, what I want to do is back on these slides here, cover branches. And branches are really great in large software projects and in small software projects. I'm going to imagine most people, especially if you're thinking about from a hobbyist perspective, will be working on smaller projects, maybe a project of 4 people or 5 people or whoever. And it's very nice with branches because what you're able to do is have the main project, and if you will, I'm going to go into the whiteboard and I'm going to be drawing to show you guys this example. So you can see this whiteboard just fine, correct? If I draw on it, that appears. Yeah. Awesome. So with a branch, and this is something that's very essential with Git, again, for multiple people on the same project. If you only have one person, branches are not as important, but they could still be useful for the management side of things if you want to keep track of different stages or different features of the software. You have what's normally called a master branch or a main branch, depending on how old your repository is. So if you have this main branch or master branch, whatever you'd like to call it, this is the core of the project. This is usually the final version, the stable version, the version that's not being worked on necessarily at the time, but is stable and can run and is hopefully as bug-free as you can make it. This is the project. And like we have our master branch that I've been committing to, you'll see, oh, this is actually main, it's called. We have our main branch here. And if you were to look back in time at the history, you see we have these, oh, I'm sorry, you don't see the GitHub desktop because I'm in the whiteboard. So give me 1 second here. Okay. I'm sharing again. So are you guys able to see GitHub desktop now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So in GitHub desktop, we were on this screen before. We were doing all of our adding and committing and whatever. But now we can pop over to history and we could see, oh, okay, so we have a history of everything we've done. We created, when I created the repo, when we have the creation of the test file, and when we have the updating of the test file, all those commits have been saved. So now I'm going to go to the whiteboard and draw that out. So we have the main branch, we have the initial commit, the creation of the repo. We have the creating the text file, and now we have the updating the test file. So all those have been saved. They're all on one branch. It's very simply one after the other. And what branching allows us to do is at this commit, we're going to go like this. And rather than having the main branch right here, which I will try to draw with my mouse, main, we're going to have this extra branch that I will just be calling, I'll call it Matt because that's my name. So I'm going to call it my own name. And this is what's nice with small projects is you can create a branch and call it your own name and you can work on your own branch. So let's say I got somebody, let's say I have a friend, Bernard, who's working on the same project with me. He wants to create his own branch and do his own thing. And I'm just going to make the line go out farther. So I create a branch on my own computer and I say, okay, I want to add this file, that's a commit. I want to change this file, that's a commit. And I want to add another file, that's a commit. And then Bernard's saying, oh, I want to add a file right here. That's a commit right there. And he wants to add another file right here. That's a commit right there. So what we've now done is we have taken the same project that we branched off at this one commit. So I have these 3 commits. Bernard has these 3 commits. But now he's created some changes and I've created some changes. But as far as the main project is concerned, nothing's happened yet. We have all this work on branches. So now that we've done all this work on our branches, our own branches that we called our own names, nobody else touches this but us, and they're only on our machines. Now we're able to merge these back into main. So maybe I go first and I merge. And so now at this point, main has this commit, this commit, this commit, the first 3 that we did on the branch, main branch. And now it has the 3 commits that I made on my own branch. And now Bernard is able to go in and he's able to merge. And now main is filled with all the commits that Bernard and I made, and it's the commits that we made before. And all the work that Bernard and I did on our own is now present on the main branch. And that's essentially what branches is. You branch off at a certain point, a certain commit, you make some more changes, and then you try to merge back in. Anybody have any questions about branching or the idea of branching before I get into showing you how to do it on GitHub Desktop? Yes. Yeah, normally when you're looking at Jeremy's branching and forking the same thing, when you're getting into the terminology, it could be different, but yes, it could be the same thing. It could also be the case when somebody says forking, they mean to take a repository, like take the entire main branch, and they create a fork of that repository over down here, and now it's an entirely separate repository. So when somebody says forking, they could be referring to taking the repository, making a new repository out of it, and now it's like a whole new project almost. So it depends on the person, but terminology can get kind of weird, but that's usually what I think of when I think of forking. So that's all you need to know about the branching concept. I'm going to show you how to do it on the GitHub Desktop. Unless there's any other questions about branching. If there is, feel free to speak up now. Okay. So in GitHub Desktop, which I hope you can see right now, everybody can see GitHub Desktop again, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So at this point, we have all the changes we just made. We want to make a branch. So what we're able to do very easily in GitHub Desktop, if we were in Git, it would be a whole lot of commands like git checkout, so-and-so, so-and-so, a few dashes. GitHub Desktop, very easy, very simple. We hit branch on the top here, and we hit new branch. And we give the branch a name. I'm going to call it Matt, like I did in the example. And now we have this branch. And now we're on a branch. It says right here in the top in GitHub Desktop, current branch Matt instead of current branch main. You can switch between the two very easily. And now I'm going to show you, I'm going to make a change in the main, or sorry, in the Matt branch that we set up. So I'm going to call it matt.txt. I'll edit the thing to just say Matt, just so it has something in the text file. And so now you're going to see we have a changed file on this branch. We have a changed file in our, I have this folder that I keep appearing. I apologize about that. Apparently I closed the folder. So give me 1 second. I go back into Documents, GitHub, and you'll see that we have that file in our repository folder. So this normally we could just commit and that's all fine. Well, it's been added, I can commit, but I want to go back to the main branch. We leave the change on that branch. We don't want to bring the change over. We want to leave the change on that branch. And now when I go back into this project, you'll see that the text file is gone because we switched branches. The reason that even though it's in the Windows Explorer, I'm seeing the files, I can literally see the files disappear, even just by changing branches in the GitHub desktop, is because they're all being stored in this .git folder. They're all being saved in here. That's Hello? I'm sorry, my headset, my microphone cut out there, but
you're good now.
Yeah, the change we just made is saved in this folder. And now when we go back, and I'm going to try to, there we go. You guys can see now that folder here, the repository in GitHub Desktop. I change back to the branch we just had, and we have some changes here that we stashed. Right in the middle, it says view your stash changes in blue. I hit the blue button to view the stash, and I restore those changes. And now it's just magically appeared right back. This text file we created is back because it's on this branch or in this branch, so it's part of this repository again. So now we're going to want to commit this change that we've already added with this checkbox, and then we'll be able to merge our branches to have our change on the main branch. So I'm just going to say created mat.txt. No description, speaks for itself. I'll commit to mat. You'll see the button says commit to mat, not commit to main. As far as main is concerned, there is no mat file. But mat, as far as the mat branch is concerned, there is a file. So at this point, what I'm going to want to do is switch back into main. This is where we merge the branches together. I switch back into the branch that I want to merge into, in this case, the main branch. And I will just say merge into current branch. Go to branch on the top, merge into current branch. And merge into main, I want to merge mat into main. Well, too many M's in this example, but you can see the essence of the point here. So we have the main branch. We want to take the change we just made in mat and put it into main. You'll see that it very helpfully tells us there's one commit we made in mat we want to put onto the main branch. So I'll just choose mat to merge, and merge mat into main is successful. So now we're back on the main branch, and this text file has just appeared. And that's obviously a very simple example, just one file, just one commit, but that is all there really is to merging when you're on a local repository like this, merging within GitHub Desktop itself. So is there any question about merging or about branches in general, or anything to do with what we've covered so far? If there's any question about anything, feel free to put it in the Zoom chat or to say it out loud. Okay. So the reason that I called the branch Matt my own name wasn't just narcissism. The reason I called it that is because it is very easy when you're working on a like 3 or 4 man project, which is how I initially learned Git, was just with like a 3 or 4 man project, working on some little software, whatever it was, is we have our main branch, and then we all get together and we all say, oh, I want you to work on feature A, I'll work on feature B, you work on feature C. So we create a branch, we call it our own names, 3 different names, we call it our own names, work on that feature on our own branch, and then we merge it into the main branch from there. And so that way, at the end of the day, when the main branch, when everything was merged into the main branch, we had all 3 changes on that branch. And that is something that is really the best part about GitHub, is letting multiple people work on it. But in order to do so, you'll be needing to actually be using github.com. As far as github.com is concerned, what I've done here doesn't really exist, because we've not published the repository. It's all local. So what I want to do, well, this is another file here, another slide here that I don't need to worry about, because we talked about that. This is just merging branches. But as far as GitHub is concerned, we have not done anything because we haven't put it on github.com. So what I'm going to want to do now is everybody Bernard, I think you have a list of everybody's GitHub accounts, correct? Or GitHub
Yeah.
emails.
Yeah, I do.
Yes. So if you haven't completed the sign in, then please do so. But private message or just put in the Zoom chat your GitHub email. What I'm going to do is invite everybody to a GitHub repository, a cloud repository on github.com. And so we'll all be able to work on one repository together, do some basic adding and committing and pushing and branching. So we'll be able to have everybody run through, use Git with GitHub Desktop, use GitHub Desktop with github.com. So you get an idea of how to work on this in a actual project capacity. So if I go to github.com, which I believe everybody can see this, correct?
Yeah. Do we
What
stop
I'm
the
what I'm able
recording
to
for
do,
privacy recording?
good idea, stop the recording. Yeah, I don't know if I have the ability to do that. All right, if you're listening to the recording, we are back. Everybody has been invited to the repository, and now we're going to be showing how to clone this cloud repository that you have just been invited to. We're going to clone that to your local machine so that after it's been cloned to your local machine, copied to your local machine, then you're able to make some changes, branches, and push those changes to the cloud repository. So that way people are able to see those changes yourself. And you can't really edit a cloud repo until you copy it to your local machine yourself or clone it to your local machine yourself. So if you have been given access to the repo, which you should see in your inbox, you should be able to follow a link and pop onto a page very similar to what you're seeing now on my screen.
Yeah,
If
and
anybody,
you
go
should
ahead,
also
Bernard.
be able to see it in GitHub Desktop.
Yes, that's going to be in GitHub Desktop. You should be able to see that link or see a thing appear. If anybody isn't able to get to this page on github.com, then speak up now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so in GitHub Desktop, what you're going to want to do, oh, I see a chat. Sorry, I wish that Zoom was more cooperative. Yes, I'll send another invitation. Give me one quick second, guys. I'm going to stop sharing, send out an invitation very quickly. We can keep the recording going. Just skip ahead 10 seconds if you would like listening to the recording. If you're listening to this live, then you're stuck waiting some more. Let's see, invite a collaborator. Okay. There's the invitation sent out. And go back to sharing. So what you're going to want to do is pop into GitHub Desktop. There we go. Is pop into GitHub Desktop. And I'm actually going to remove, I already have it cloned. I'm going to remove it, forget about it. And I'm going to be cloning it myself for you guys. So in GitHub Desktop, what you want to do is hit File, Clone Repository. And it's going to show a list of every repository you have access to. It is probably just going to be this one that we just created. If you have others, you'll see those. Just choose the one that we've created here. If you don't see the repository listed, then what you're going to want to do is go into Options in GitHub Desktop and sign out and sign back in. And that should fix the problem. Just for whatever reason, sometimes there's an issue updating with the one that you've just been invited to, repo you've just been invited to. So just go to File, Clone Repository, choose the workshop, Git IEEE Winter 2021, choose the repository, sorry. And you are going to want to choose a local path for it. For me, it's going right into my GitHub folder in my documents, which I think is a great spot for it. Just choose the workshop or repository, choose the local path, and then hit clone. And that's all you got to do to clone the repository. Again, normally it would be like a bajillion commands that I used to love the commands for Git. Now I love the UI on the GitHub Desktop. So there's going to be some interactive parts for this next bit. So if everybody could go ahead and do that and ask a question if they're unable to find it, we'll just sort of wait for a second. And I'm still unable to see the chat box. I have to stop sharing to see the chat boxes. Okay. I'm just going to wait a second, let everybody catch up. I don't want to lose anybody because this is where, if you guys stick around for another, maybe 20 minutes or so, not even. Maybe not, maybe I shouldn't say that, but there will be a sort of prize at the end. Not necessarily a raffle, but a prize at the end that will be based around the changes that you've made to the cloud repository. So follow along with what I'm about to show you, and then we'll be able to potentially win something at the end. So I'm just waiting another little bit. Want to make sure everybody can clone this. I'll wait another 10 seconds. It's just file, clone repository, and then choose the repository. Git IEEE Winter 2021. And you'll notice that the repositories all have these dashes in the name. You can't create a repository with spaces. So just a little naming convention for you. You could do the underscores or camel caps or whatever you'd like. It's just a system, so use the system however you'd like when you do it yourself. I'm just going to imagine everybody's cloned. If everybody has not cloned the repository, then speak up, I'll slow down, but I'm going to go on to creating a branch. And creating a branch on your local repository, or yes, on your local repository is the same as we did it before that I showed you before. But now you're doing it on this cloud repository. So here you'll notice there's actually two branches. The master branch and one for, I believe, Bernard 17 hours ago was the last change made. So you're going to be on the master branch. You're going to want to hit branch and then new branch. And I really wish I could see the chat box in Zoom, but Zoom is uncooperative. Okay, good. If there's a question, Bernard, then you'll have to be keeping tabs on that. I don't want to keep on stopping sharing, starting sharing.
Yeah, I can read it out loud for you.
Gotcha, thank you. So you're on the master branch. It says current branch master. You always want to make sure what branch you're on whenever you make a change, because you really don't want to commit on the wrong branch. So you check the current branch, it's master. You want to make a new branch, and you want to name it something unique. I think your Drexel ID is the preferred name. So if you can name it your Drexel ID or just like your first name, initial, or whatever you'd like. If you already made a branch while I was talking, don't worry, you can just make a new one. Nothing to worry about on that front. Just switch back to master, make a new one, or just make a new one. You're able to delete branches just fine here, branch delete. So I'm on master, I hit new branch, and I'm gonna make it my Drexel ID, right? MWD46, and I will create that branch. You'll see it says publish branch immediately. You can do this, or you cannot do it right now. We're gonna make some changes first. But that's just because as far as github.com is concerned, our branch does not exist yet. It's only on our local machine. So now we have created a branch, and you guys have created your own branches. And we're going to want to make some sort of change to our repository. So you want to pop into your repository in your Explorer, whether it's Windows Explorer or whatever the term is called on a Mac. You want to pop into the folder so you can like right click and hit a new file. You'll see it has the PDF, the slides for this workshop. It has our little README, which is just something that's nice to have in all repositories, and it has this little Python Sudoku solver for you. If you ever want to solve a Sudoku, we provided that for you free of charge. So I'm going to go ahead, right-click New, and I'll make a new text document. I'm just going to call it again MWD46, which I did not type, MWD46.txt. And want to make sure, again, I'm on the right branch. I'm on the MWD46 branch. Here, I'm going to, it says no changed files, which I believe if I edit this and I'll just say 46 and I save this. I'm not doing this in the wrong folder, am I? Oh, I am doing this in the wrong folder. Apologies for that. You shouldn't have that problem, but I have multiple versions of this. That's why I'm having this issue. Everything I just said checks out. That just wasn't the folder that was being tracked in GitHub Desktop. So you yourself should be able to go into the folder that you've just cloned, create a file, call it whatever you'd like. GitHub Desktop should then see that file that like, hey, this file's been changed. It says file, it's been created really, but changed file is just the term they use. If you see that, then whatever you fill it with whatever you'd like, put whatever you'd like, it's fine. Don't edit the current files we have existing, just make your own new one. Then you're gonna wanna create a commit message. It has a default one, you'll see create MWD46.txt. I'm just gonna say make my own, created MWD46. And no description, no worries, not that big of a change. And then I'm going to be committing this to my branch. Don't commit to master, but commit to your branch. Make sure you're on the proper branch. And that's it for that part of it. Is everybody able to get to that part? They're able to make a file, commit that file in GitHub Desktop. Is that okay with everybody? Make a branch, then make a new file. Okay. If that's okay with everybody, then what I'm going to want to do, or what I'm going to want to show you is, again, as far as github.com is concerned, nothing we've done exists. So we've made these changes all locally. There's a distributed version control system. All the versions of the project are distributed. So we made this branch. We made a change on this branch. Now we want to publish the branch. This is essentially it's pushing is what we're doing. We made a change locally, and now we are pushing to the remote repository. So just go ahead and hit publish branch, either this little blue button or this main button up here. This is the same button you would click to push changes. So I'm going to hit publish branch. It goes through a whole little loading process. You'll see it says origin, fetch origin now. It says that just means fetch origin now. It just means to check and make sure there's nothing new. It just fetches the currently existing head or the currently existing origin. That's a bad way to explain it. It fetches the most recent copy of this branch, make sure there's nothing new on this branch. But I know there's nothing new because I just made this branch and published it. And I can see there's already branches filtering in. You can see those same branches in other branches. So make a change, publish the branch. I'll wait a second here, and I'm going to be showing you guys in github.com. Now there's 11 branches. There used to be just 2. Now there's 11 because all of you guys are now working on the same repository as I'm working on it now. So was anybody unable to publish their branch to github.com, to our remote repository? Okay. So we got one more, 11 to 12, that's good. Now I'm gonna want to go ahead and, again, we're going to be making a change. I just wanna get you guys used to the idea. So whatever file you just created, go ahead and change that file or make a new file. I think I'm in the wrong folder. No, I'm not. So make a change to that file, whatever you'd like, something that github.com is going to be able to say, oh, they changed something. And I want you to just get used to, you make a change, it pops up. I'm in the wrong folder again, pardon me. Something like you make a change, the change pops up in github.com or GitHub Desktop rather, you commit that to your proper branch. And now it says push origin, just push your most recent change. Yeah, that way, that's all you really do when you're working on this yourself is you make sure you're on the right branch after you've created it, you make some changes, commit those changes, and then you can push those changes. Now, there's no need to push after every single commit. You can make a few commits and then push if you'd like. Total personal preference. Obviously, we're just doing very small changes. So just make a change, push that change. And that way, github.com is right away going to recognize like, oh, there's recent pushes on this branch and that branch and the other branch. You'll see it's very nice. It's able to tell us if I show, like, see, there's 2 commits that have been made to this branch and all of your branches. And yet, as far as master is concerned, it's 2 commits behind. These are 2 commits ahead of master, and there's nothing that has been pushed to master that these don't have. If I go to this much older branch that we have 17 hours ago, we were working on this with Bernard and I, you'll see that this is 7 commits behind master and 1 commit ahead. And it's kind of strange looking at this, how it can be 7 behind and 1 ahead. But all this means is that there is 1 thing that has been done on this branch that master does not have. And there has been 7 things done on master that this branch does not have. I think I said that correctly, but if we wanted to merge these, we would have to pull from master and catch this branch up and then push. Or sorry, not push. We have to merge and then merge this branch into master. Git is very nice at, let's say somebody changes file A and you're working on file B and you merge you merge the branch with file A into your branch that's working on file B. File B is not going to be messed around with because the changes on that other branch only concern file A. So if we were to merge this into master, we were to update this with master, it would not lose its 1 commit because ideally, this 1 commit is not something that's been messed around with on master. It's its own thing, its own file, its own little part of our project. So now that we've been able to create a branch locally, we've been able to publish that branch and push changes to that branch. I think you could see how you could kind of extrapolate that further with your own projects. Like, oh, I create a branch for this part of our project or that part of our project and make some commits and push those parts. Now I'm going to show you how you can merge the branches on github.com. Now it's entirely possible to merge branches locally, which is what you have to do on a local repository like we were doing before. The repository didn't exist on github.com, so we had to do it locally. But now that all the repositories are on github.com, all the branches are on github.com, we can now work remotely, and all these different people from all these different computers are all working on this one remote repository. It's a lot nicer to merge things on the cloud repository. So I am going to go right ahead. And it's actually very nice that it's coming up right here, compare and pull request. Pull request means request that we pull that branch into this branch, master. In this case, I'm on the master branch. If I could switch the branches in github.com, I just pop over, I won't check out, and I'll pop here and you see that the file I just made is right there. So what I want to do is I want to merge my thing, MWD46, and I'll merge that into the master branch. So I could hit compare and pull request right there, or I could hit the pull requests tab and hit a new pull request. And you'll see there's a nice little arrow here. The UI in github.com says, okay, well, the base, which is master, and then what do we want to merge into master? We take what's here on the right and push it to the left. I shouldn't say push, that's an actual term. We take what's on the right and merge it into what's on the left. I will choose MWD46. And now it is comparing the two branches. And this is where stuff can get strange in Git. You've probably heard the term merge conflict. This is where you'll see merge conflicts. A merge conflict is when, let's say somebody was committing to master, which they really shouldn't do because master is supposed to be this like special untouched thing. Let's say somebody was committing to master, changing file A, messing around with it, and then you have this branch that you're messing around with file A, and now you try to merge the two. GitHub's going to throw up a warning and say, whoa, there's a conflict. These are both editing the same file. What do you want to do? You're able to generally in GitHub.com see the two files side by side, and you can almost like you got a nice little like discrete pair of scissors. You're saying, oh, I want to cut this up and put that in. I want to cut this up and put that in. Sort of try to merge the conflict, or solve the merge conflict, I should say, by making sure that I want to take these changes from this branch, these changes from that branch, and make one file. But none of that's happening here because all I've done is create my own file and update that file. So there's no potential for a merge conflict. That's why it's very important that when you do this yourself with your own software project group, that you don't just rely on GitHub or Git to manage it yourself. You have to kind of speak to each other and say, you mess around with this part and I'll mess around with this part, and then we'll do our own branches and then merge them together. That way you can cut down on the possible merge conflicts. So MWD46 into master, they can be automatically merged because there's no merge conflict. Create a pull request is checking again because it really wants to make sure there's no conflict, I suppose. And now I can merge that pull request and confirm. And now master has been updated with my little MWD46.txt file. I'm able to actually delete this branch, or I could keep the branch. If you were doing this as part of a long-term project, let's say you have a branch just for like user interface or whatever, user interface name of the branch, and then you make some changes, you merge into master, but you still want to keep working on that branch, then maybe you can keep that branch around and continue from there, now that it's been put up to date with master, or you can delete the branch and make a new one. That's all personal preference. For this example, I'm just going to say delete the branch. It's gone as far as github.com is concerned. I can go into my local repository and delete the branch delete. Don't do this on your own. I'm just doing this for myself because I merged it. Branch delete because I got rid of it on the remote, get rid of it on the local. No problem. It says it exists. It's because I didn't fetch the origin. So now you'll see I'm down a branch, but in the master part of this branch, I have MWD46. Somebody else merged too. Awesome. That's totally fine. No worries there. And it's actually great because we were down 2 branches, and that means you're able to do the merge pull request on your own and nothing problematic happened. That's totally fine. Now, what I want to show you guys is in GitHub Desktop, you want to switch back to master. And switch to master, it should be shown as the default branch, and you're going to want to fetch the origin. And you'll see right away that there's going to be, it says for me 9 commits. I think that's because I didn't pull in a while. You guys, it ought to say 2 or 3, I would think. Whatever it says, you fetch the origin when you switch to it on the local. And that way, by fetching the origin, it says what's been changed, what's different. There's 9 commits for me, there's however many for you. You can go ahead and pull. And now by hitting this little pull button, you've taken all the changes that have been made remote and you updated it on your local copy of the project, your local repository. So now you are able to go ahead and check it out here, and you have all these extra text files. And so you have, and now you've gone through the entire Git process, really, of cloning a repository, making a branch for yourself, making some changes, publishing that branch, making some more changes. You've pushed to that branch, and now you have gone ahead and merged that branch, or at least seen me merge that branch into the master. And so now this repository is up to date with everything that we've just done. And really, that's the core of Git and GitHub Desktop. If you're able to follow along with all that, then you're able to do this yourself on your own software projects. Obviously, we've done very simple files, but the Git process is the same. So does anybody have any questions about anything that we've talked about today? Because that's, in terms of showing you guys, that's really all I have to show you for Git and GitHub and GitHub Desktop. Anybody have any questions about any of the above 3? Anything else that any questions about Git and GitHub? Okay. Don't leave, because we are going to have a raffle or 2, or not a raffle necessarily, but a chance for you to win prizes. I think we should stop the sharing or stop the recording now, Bernard.